away from. Got a new scooter.
Oh, okay. And a helmet, right? Then you're wearing a helmet all the time now, right? Right?
I plead the fifth. This time it's a sit one, which is I don't really like the sitting thing, but it has a nice basket in front. So now I guess I'm taking paint this semester. Now I can put my paint there. I don't know if I'm the only one, but I don't like bikes. So it's
Yeah, the ones that are like weird.
yeah. Me too, unless it's like
Unless it's, right now when it's a new release,
that's
that's
why
like.
I got to fix one. At least
As long as you don't need me.
I got a sudden excruciating pain with migraine, followed by nausea, and then I threw up.
One time I was walking up into a cafe and I got keys. I was going to pass out. I was so bad. I could have fell right through the door.
I think that's like the worst part, it's embarrassment. My first time breathing asthma,
Oh no.
I threw up. That was so embarrassing. Now I donate without problems. I get a little nauseous quickly. It's manageable. Oh, you get pain. Oh, you don't want it.
I can handle piercings just fine. It doesn't hurt. It's not like I'm scared of piercing. It just makes me very nauseous.
I had
I think it's like adrenaline.
I had stitches on my hand, and when I went to the checkout to get them removed, the lady ignored me and just went, it ripped them all out, and it just like passed out.
Did I ever tell you about my incident where I slammed my thumb? keep in mind, I just came from finishing Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna be like that until like time skip, where it's just like kind of
Oh, the most painful shot I ever got was after I was attacked by a Google. Look it up. Like, it's South Africa. They're very aggressive on purpose because we struggle a lot with like crime stuff. I got attacked by a Google and it like chomped up there. The bite was as painful as the rabies shot I had to get inside the wound.
oh my god.
That hurt like hell.
All right, on that note, welcome everybody.
Sorry.
All right, live online participants. I see there's a few people in the live stream there. Just give me a thumbs up in the live stream. Let me know that this audio is indeed going out over the interwebs. And we have a bunch of people here in person as well. We'll look around the building later. But welcome, the new building. Yay! This is an incredible amount of work by a huge amount of people to make this happen. Just building the building within the time it happened. You know, it's less than 3 years. And then going from just empty building to somewhat functional classroom today, over just like probably the last month, was a lot of work.
I have to be an admin. It's very impressive how fast they built this place.
Yeah. I mean, it's they built it very quickly, no matter what the context. And for a Maricopa County Community College building, it was built at light speed, crazy fast. So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about the building and the room and everything here. But let's. I know I've had a lot of you in class before, but not everybody. And I recognize most of the names on the live stream, but not everybody. So we've got to do all of the kind of boring things here at the beginning, going through the syllabus, going through course expectations and that kind of thing. And then we'll get rolling with some introductions and talk about what's going on and what we're doing a little bit differently this semester, all that kind of stuff. So, everybody ready? Yeah, right?
I was drinking my coffee. Yeah.
The live stream situation is not quite as elegant as it was in the other room yet, but we have some ways to go here in terms of getting the other cameras and microphones set up and everything.
Will we be working with VR?
Yeah, definitely.
Always wanted to use Unreal.
All right. Hey, Celeste. Okay. Everybody's here for AVC 240, right? You're all in the correct room. Yes? Cinematography and directing for animation. This is a fun abbreviation of animation. I didn't do that. That's just what the system automatically shortened the class as. And this for cinematography.
I don't like that.
Yeah, that's not my doing. So we're in here 1 to 3:40 every Monday and Wednesday. My usual schedule. What's different about the multiple attendance options? So those of you who've taken classes with me before know that I usually do this thing where we can be in different modalities. as a way to make the class more accessible to everyone, right? Because this class is not like English 101 or English 102, where there's like 300 sections of it. There's only one, just me. I'm the only one who teaches this class. So obviously being more flexible with the time is good. The thing that we're doing this semester is that I'm asking everyone to either be here in person or live online. So not time shifting the class and just kind of watching it whenever. That just really doesn't work out over the long haul of the semester. People wait until the last minute to even participate in the class. It's really going to help everybody in terms of scheduling. Committing to be here in person automatically means that you're scheduling 5 hours a week to dedicate to thinking about all of this, which is great. I know a lot of students struggle with time management coming into college from high school, and just expecting everyone to be able to schedule their own class when the time requirement is as large as classes like this just doesn't really work out. Also, as we'll see later, we've got this brand new building with all these great new facilities, and using a lot of the facilities here with our VR, AR headsets and the projection space and everything, all of that is not quite transferable to, being at home. You have to kind of have to be here to use a lot of it, to really use any of it. And so we're trying to encourage that as much as possible as well. So everybody understand what's going on with that and how this is different from what we have done previously in some of my classes? Yeah. And I think the, why we're doing it that way makes sense. Yeah, because later I'll stop this stream at, what are we done? We're done at 3:30 in here. And so like around 3:15 or so, I'll stop this stream here, and we're going to stream from my phone so that we can walk around and the people at home can also see the building and facility and everything, as a way to also encourage everybody to come in and experience this really nice brand new building. The room is great. Not only is like the technical stuff great, but it feels way less institutional than a lot of the other spaces on campus here, right? Feels like a hip lab rather than a boring classroom, right? Montana, hip? It's very hip, right? Yes.
They should be printers here, right?
Yep, we'll get to that. They're all over there right now.
Like, we're allowed to use the other facilities, right?
Yeah. We'll try and take advantage. Like you guys are class 2 in the building, right? So you're part of history there. Today is the first day of classes in the building. I'm the only person teaching in this building this semester. So the good news is we've got a lot of great new equipment. The bad news is we've got a lot of great new equipment that may not be properly configured yet. So there'll be some ups and downs as the semester goes on. You all have worked with technology before. You understand that not everything works out of the box on day one, especially when you're trying to get it to work, here with like lots of stuff. So yeah, we've got this space here for doing immersive things that don't have the headset involved. So like the projection wraps around the entire area there. We can look at some of that stuff later. But yeah, it's going to be super, super fun. And again, this building I'm talking about is here. So someone already said something on campus about how they couldn't find the building because it's not on the map. And it's not on the map, which is why I made you a map and drew the building right there. Right, so we're in the far northeast corner of Glendale Community College, right? This little enclave here, which most of you know when you drive by, where fire sciences and EMT are. This building a year ago was just a warehouse that was sitting over here. And then they tore down the warehouse and built this whole place, which is pretty great. And this building is technically the Steamworks Center. So you guys know what that stands for?
Science, technology, engineering, art, math.
That's right. Let's see.
I
If,
thought that there's some schools
Was what?
It's a meme online, like our Lord and Savior game. He's the creator of Steam.
Uh,
You can buy games, but he's notorious for being pro-consumer.
Pro what?
Consumer.
Oh, okay.
Because he will nuke anyone who tries to scam you.
Oh, okay, I
And
see.
He ensures that gamers can have a safe and enjoyable experience. So he's quite notorious for the visual.
There we go. Science, technology, engineering, art, and math. Notice I made the art one bigger. Cool. So that's all there. Everything's being live streamed. Obviously, you people on the live stream found it. Here's the link to the channel. And then this should go directly to the live tab. And so those of you from previous semesters know that everything accumulates here over the course of the semester. Just be aware that I don't have separate channels for each class. All of it goes onto this channel. And so you'll see the other classes there, but all of the ones for AVC 240 will be labeled as such right there, right? And yeah. Our course description and course competencies for this class. Competencies. Is there anything else I missed in the front? No, no. Right, so this is cinematography and directing for animation. We're going to do, I mean, Blender will be our primary thing here throughout the semester, but they'll be looking at it primarily through the perspective of using the camera and the virtual camera. Computers. So another reason to be in here and using the lab is that we've got these really nice brand new computers. All of these have like 50, 60 Ti's in them. And so these are really nice computers. And most of you already have your home computer situation worked out. You want to have something that has an NVIDIA GPU or some sort of dedicated GPU in it. If you're not really sure what that is, look at this video. You can also check your task manager and then look over here and look at your GPU. And what we want to see over here is either NVIDIA or AMD, not Intel, which would mean it's like an integrated graphics card. If you don't have a computer that's going to cut it this semester, good news, you can get one from GCC for free. So you can check that out for the semester by filling out this form right here, the student request form. And I would do that as soon as possible because in the past semesters we have ran out of them. But yeah, that's not checking out like the library where you need to return it in 2 weeks. It's checking it out, you know, for the whole semester. So you get to use it. Now, the one thing that is different here is that if you do check out a computer from the school, in the technology orientation assignment, which we'll talk about more later, the computers from the school this semester have a different way of installing things that you need to get sort of permission to install. This tutorial walks you through that. Just be aware, those of you who have borrowed computers previously and are borrowing computers again, it's going to be slightly different this semester, so be aware of that. Good. Any questions about what we have so far? Good? Okay, great. Let's go over and look at the actual syllabus proper. Our schedule, we're in here Mondays and Wednesdays, so we lose a couple Mondays this year. Labor Day, which comes up in like 2 weeks from today, I think is September 7th. So we'll be off that day. And so there's no class, no live stream at all. And then we'll also lose Veterans Day, which is Monday, November 11th. We talked about the course modality. Everybody is now clear about that. In terms of, yeah, there's these live online way of taking the class. I would encourage you, if at all possible, to be here, to take advantage of the things, take advantage of the other people in the room. I try to make the live online and online experience as much like being in person as possible. This class is not like other quote unquote online classes where it's just kind of a checklist of things in Canvas that you're just kind of checking through things. That just doesn't work for this kind of material in this kind of class. So that's 2.5 hours of lecture each week and back and forth. I'm going to try and chunk out the lectures into maybe smaller segments or multiple small segments. We'll see over the course of the semester. Make sure you're scheduling enough time throughout the semester for actually working on your work outside of this class. In terms of when will this lab be open for you to work on your own outside of class? TBA. I don't know yet. We need to, I mean, I'm in here all day on Mondays and Wednesdays. I don't exactly know what's going to be going on with this availability. We'll see what we can make happen there. But at the beginning of the semester here, I would encourage you to actually think about your schedule. You know, at the very least, do you have 2 hours every week outside of this class to devote to this work, right? Like, look at your schedule, your work, your home, your family obligations. Is there actually time? If you lay it all out in Google Calendar or whatever you want to lay it out in, do you have some sort of block that's reasonably uninterrupted to devote to doing this kind of stuff, right? Just be real with yourself about the schedule. Taking 2 of my classes in a semester is a heavy load because we end up doing this weekly schedule of doing assignments. You know, if you've done it before with one of my classes, I think it's doable and possible. I don't think there's anyone, as far as I know, who's taking all 3 classes this semester. I would advise against taking 3 of my classes in a semester. Only a handful of students historically have ever run that gauntlet. It's a lot of work to do that. So look at your schedule. And if you're taking 2 of my classes in one semester, be aware that they keep the same kind of schedule, like things are due on Tuesday night. So you need to schedule appropriately, right? At the beginning of the semester here, this is your opportunity to actually sit down and be like, to be real with yourself. Do I actually have time to do all this stuff, right? This is part of the pros and cons of community college, right? If you want a way to college where you didn't have a job and your only thing you were doing is living there and going to school, that's a different kind of schedule than a lot of community college students who are trying to, be really important members of their family and then also probably work jobs at the same time. It is a different threshold. And a lot of times that's good that community college is available for people who are trying to do both those things at the same time. But you also need to be real with yourself, right? Can you work 60 hours a week and also go to school full time? It's really hard. How much do you sleep, right? Like, something's got to give. There's only so much time in the day, right? And so I know the community college likes to promote the fact that, like, hey, you can work and go to school at the same time. You can, to an extent, right? So you have to balance those things in terms of, like, at what point is the schedule detracting from the quality of my education? Because ultimately, learning something is what we're doing here. Right? It's what we're supposed to be doing here, right? So now at the beginning of the semester is a really good time to, like, sit back and actually take inventory of that. And, like, I can't answer those questions for you. You need to answer them for yourself. Cool. Great. So everyone in here is definitely taking AVC 100. And most of you, I think, have taken AVC 184, right? The Introduction to Computer Animation. That's either Brian or Amanda that teach that class, or if you took it somewhere else, I'm not quite sure who it is. You definitely want to have AVC 184 before taking this course. Again, we don't have a lot of hard prerequisites here in the Digital Media Arts program because it means everybody would take much longer to finish their degree if we made sure that everyone took everything in sequence. Also, it's really, really difficult to sequence when we have people starting at different times of the year, and we don't offer every class every semester because there's only so many people to teach the classes. So keeping all of that in mind. Great. Okay, so required text. There's no required text, right? We're going to be working with all of our course content, and there may be some readings, but those will be disseminated via PDF and stuff. The things that are required, a notebook. In fact, this is a great opportunity for you to get the notebooks out of your backpack and start writing things down. I really, really, really encourage people to write things down. Because the data is clear. People who write things down retain the information much better than people who type. Typing does not establish the same kind of neural pathway structures in your brain that writing does. Writing is a different part of your brain than typing. And the data on that is clear. Also, as an old person, right, I came up through school at a time where, writing things down was the only option, right? I don't even have a laptop till like towards the end of my undergraduate degree. So writing things down. Also, it's never been easier to take your written down notebook and turn it into digital notes. There's so many options for just easily photographing and scanning your pages and dumping them into computer usable text. So all of that is, provided your handwriting is even remotely legible. It works for me, so probably works for most of you because my handwriting is not spectacular. External hard drive. So especially working in the lab this semester, this new lab, a lot of you already have something that's a USB 3.0-ish external hard drive as a way to back up the work that you're doing here in the lab, because working off these machines locally will be the fastest, most performant way to work on the machines. But then being able to move things back and forth, all of the files that we use in this class are of a size that using a hard drive is much better than just emailing yourself 60 Blender files or whatever. That's not going to be a sustainable backup strategy or file transportation strategy. So most of you already have one of these. If you are confused about that, if you find some, definitely don't spend more than $100 on this, right? Spending less than that usually puts you in the right kind of range for how much storage one would need. And this isn't just for this class. I've already told everyone else in the other classes, use it for those classes. Certainly all of my classes and all of your other digital media arts classes, this should be more than enough space to use for all of those classes and backing things up. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah. So thumb drives, not great, right? Can you write to them? Yes. Are they fast? Generally, no, right? Having an external hard drive, and in this case, an external SSD drive, is really the best option there. If I'll look on whatever Best Buy has right now and try and post something on Discord to, as like a recommendation of like, oh, this would be pretty good. They used to be under $100. All of the computer equipment now is, 1.5x the price of what it used to be for reasons. And so, I don't know. Everything's expensive now.
Reasons being AI.
Great. Okay. Grading and standards. So what to know, we are going to have our weekly projects that we work on. That's going to be 75% of the grade. And then you put everything together at the end of the semester in a portfolio, and that's your final 25% of the grade. So you want to make it to the end of the semester and put the final portfolio together. Attendance requirements. So you have to be here in person or be live online while we're working. So that's a little bit different than what we've done before. I'll probably announce it on Wednesday. I might have like a checkbox thing on Canvas just so everyone can just say, yep, at the beginning of class, either when you're here or when you're live online, just to keep everybody honest within the first couple months here. Communicating. So this is another part of the class. Anything that is personal, so about your personal situation or something that's tough for class, this is an email. Any other question about the technical or artistic concerns, is this working, is this not working, this all goes on the class Discord. So we have a class Discord. Most of you are already on there from previous classes. We have our GCC, I think it's listed as GCC animation Discord or some such thing. That's where all of those questions go. So I would ask everybody to communicate in this fashion just so that I can keep things organized. And when you ask questions on Discord, not only can I answer them there, hopefully, but you guys can answer each other's questions there, which is also really great. Most of you guys participate pretty well with that. So if we look at it over here, Discord. There we go. So the classes are down here. So register or sign up for the particular channel. So this one. Some of the other professors also, we're all using the same Discord server. It's just slightly different channels. The thing with Discord for this class is that I ask you to change your Discord server nickname. So this, because most of you already have Discord accounts. That's great. And you don't need to create a new one. It's just that on our server, I would like you to change your nickname, which is what appears, to whatever name it is that you're using in class. Okay, so that I have some shot of understanding who I'm talking to in Discord. Otherwise, it's really difficult to not only learn everyone's name, but also learn everyone's Discord identity name as well. Does that make sense for everybody? A lot of you have already done this. You probably, once you do it once, I don't think you would need to do it again because that's not per channel, right? It's just per server. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Back over here. So late work in our work schedule. Let's look at that. So the work schedule is that, on Mondays, we're here, and that's usually when the cycle of a new project starts. So Monday's a lot of me talking about whatever the new project is. Wednesday, we usually start off with everybody's presentation videos, which is you presenting the previous week's work. And then this cycle concludes on the following Tuesday. And so everything is always due Tuesday at 8 p.m. I make it 8 p.m. instead of midnight in an effort to try and get everybody to sleep occasionally. So the next week's stuff starts on Monday. You turn in things for Tuesday, and then Wednesday we're looking at the presentation videos for things that were turned in. And then over here, this ends on Tuesday. This may seem a little bit confusing right now, but it's not that complicated once it gets rolling, right? People have done this before. It just allows everybody a complete weekend to work on each project. So keep that in mind. This very first week, there'll be some things due on Wednesday and Thursday. That's not going to be the case after this going forward. After this, we're going to keep the same schedule where everything's always due weekly on Tuesday nights at 8. Does that sound good? Yeah. I mean, it's a little confusing now because there's this overlap in that we start the next week's thing before we finish the other one, but it really gives everyone the maximum amount of time to, work on the whatever that week's stuff is. Anybody who just totally drops off the face of the earth for 2 weeks, I reserve the right to drop you from class. However, I think everyone in here who's had me before knows that I'm, possibly the world's most reasonable human being. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. And Casey said, waiting for affirmation from his students. If you communicate with me about what's happening, we can probably figure out a way to move forward. Okay? It's when people just totally disappear that, I'll be honest, most of the people who drop off just never end up completing the class, right? It just ends up being too much. So, yeah, we want to stay up with the work that we're doing. Everything gets turned in on Canvas, but you'll also be posting things on Discord so that you can comment on each other's work. The rest of the syllabus here, we have a bunch of privacy and terms of service statements. I'm required to link to all of those for all the things that we use. Diversity and safe learning environment and students' rights and responsibilities. A lot of this I'm sure you've seen in all of your other syllabi that you're looking at. Okay, this year, especially in the art department, everyone is putting AI statements in their syllabi. I've had one for a while. So let's, I've tried to be as clear as possible here so that we have some ground understanding of what's happening. So first of all, this is the statement and policy for this class. This is in no way applicable to anyone else's class. Other professors are approaching this in different ways. The institution doesn't really have like a blanket policy here. Okay. So my policy here is about being completely transparent about when and if you're using any AI tools. So in the spirit of complete transparency, you should know that I use these tools in what I consider to be a conscientious manner, mostly to be creating things to facilitate classroom use. So those of you who took in my class before, that whole lecture search system that we have, which I think is fairly useful, was created in conjunction with a lot of different coding tools. And so if I'm aware that some people have ethical and environmental concerns about these tools, if you don't want to be involved with either secondary or tertiary exposure to these tools, then that would be a problem for this class. I'm not going to require that anyone use these tools directly. I may occasionally demonstrate something in class that is not required. But we also may use tools that I've made with these tools in this class. For instance, I've made a couple of like Blender add-on things that just close a couple use case things in Blender, like a handful of smaller, tiny tool things like that. So just to be clear about all of this, if you use any of these tools. As we move through this semester, you need to be completely transparent about that when and if they are used. I'm not banning their use. You just need to be clear that, like, I did this and then I asked a language model to do that, or whatever it is you're doing. You just need to be clear about whatever that is. So as we try to navigate this going forward, I think just being not trying to obfuscate what anyone is doing makes the most sense to me as a cultural policy. And so that's what I've instituted here. Any questions about this? Does that seem clear for everybody? Okay. So that is out of the way. Any other questions about the syllabus? I think we got most of the things here that I was looking for. Let me look at the people live online. So something else some of the students do is they have the YouTube link up while they're working, so they can see what the people are saying in the live chat of YouTube there. I realize that some of your YouTube names, especially if you sign on with not your Maricopa, has other names there. I mean, it'd be great to use your Maricopa one so that I can see who's talking, but you know, whatever, it's fine. So that's all over there. Cool. All right, everybody good? All right, let's do our short class introductions here, and then I'll continue with some more back and forth. So yeah, I'm Casey, Dr. Farina, but you can call me Casey. So I've been here, I mean, I've been official full-time now. I think last year was my 10-year anniversary, but I was here for a good 6 or 7 years before that. So a while. Yeah, you get older and doing this kind of math just becomes depressing. But anyways, this is, yeah, I've been here for over 15 years now, putting all this together. The program's grown immensely. We have a bunch of full-time faculty now. It's myself. A bunch of you have probably had Michelle Blomberg, right? She's the graphic design focused faculty member, and Brian, who teaches some of the other animation classes. And so we're the full-time faculty here in the Digital Media Arts program. Why don't we go around the room, let us know your name, how long you've been at GCC, what program you're in, and something you want to learn in this class. How's that sound? Good? Okay, I'm going to turn the camera around. I'm going to do this thing so that people at home can see it a little bit better, where it's a little bit larger on the screen. And then I'm going to turn this way. You'll be able to see more of the room here in a second when I turn things around, but we'll do that for now. Actually, can I do this? And then do this. Oh, that's per device. Okay, we'll just do that. Great. Cool. All right, let's start with Kate. Go ahead and stand up when you're doing your thing, too, please.
Hi, my name is Kate. This is my 5th semester here at GCC. I am studying for my animation and time-based media associates. And in this class, storyboards and stuff like that.
Cool. We'll do storyboarding and talk about that later on. Welcome, Kate. There we go. All right. And down here, yes.
My name's Israel. Trying to study for 3D animation. Because I'm trying to learn here just animating and then just trying to just like find like exactly what style of animation I want to do. Learn more about it, see what I like, see how I enjoy it.
Cool. Welcome, Israel. Kate, Israel, and
Hello, my name is Finch. This is my 3rd year at PCC, and I am here for digital media, so it's like the whole umbrella. And I would like to learn more storyboarding stuff and like process for it. I think that's fun. I think that's it. A little bit of Blender, but we'll be here a while.
welcome, Finch. Kate, Israel, Finch, and
I'm Montana. It's like my 2nd or 3rd year. I don't know. I've been here a long time. It's just mine. I also want to do storyboarding, and I also want to make stupid stuff with my characters. I want to learn like storyboarding.
cool. Welcome, Montana. And
Hi, I'm Cullen from Punchy. I've been here for I think about like 2 years now, and I have been studying in game art for like video game production. Got the certificate. Unfortunately, this will be my last semester here, I think. But I hope to learn more about, like, look more into the topic of cinematography as a whole and give deeper understanding as to what cinematography is and what defines it rather than just composition.
okay, cool. Welcome, Punchy. So Kate, Israel, Finch, Montana, Punchy, and
My name's Colin. This is my, I think, basically the 3rd year at JCC. Studying video game production, design. And I think what I want to learn here, I'm most excited about graphics, but just to improve my skill, like, using my work and creating stuff.
cool. Welcome, Arlinka. And
Hi, my name is Celeste. I've been here for almost a year and a half. I want to learn more about storyboarding only because I want to explore more varieties of animations, which I am in animation of animated CCDL. And I hope to learn a little bit more about Blender because the last time wasn't going well, but I hope to learn a little bit more about that.
great. Welcome, Celeste. And let's go the whole way back there to Ed. Cool. Welcome. So Ed, Israel, Kate, Finch, Montana, Punchy, Arlinka, and Mark.
Hello, Mark. Here, 2 semesters from Fairness Valley Community College, taking the game art, game design, whatever that is, and just want to learn about general cinematography and getting used to it because I don't know how to skill for it.
Welcome, Mark. And another M next to Mark is
Max from time-based media for animation. This is my 3rd semester. I love cinematography and film, so I'm excited to just talk.
awesome. Welcome, Max.
My name is Alejandra. This is my 3rd semester doing animation and time-based media associates, and I'm excited to learn more of like the
cinematography side of it.
And
My name is Diana. I'm doing a certificate in animation for the first semester, and I'm excited to learn about it.
cool. Welcome, Deanna. Then, if you guys online want to type a sentence or two there, I'll read those out as we get going here. Just
If anyone's scared of failure, just do the donut tutorial.
yeah.
The donut tutorial. The donut tutorial to keep them public.
Okay, let's go. Let's see.
What scared me was
They're getting those up.
oh yeah, did not. What version? I the recent version. Did you download it through the website? Or just, the website. I see. Steam. Alright. You know, because
My last class, it was through the website.
and are you on a Mac or a Windows? I got it in there, so I'll let you shoot that. Usually Creator takes you on it's really long. It's very overwhelming.
It's not user friendly.
Yeah, but if you learn it, it's like
Okay, hold on. We got a couple here from online. Jacob is pursuing a degree in animation and time-based media. Excited to learn about cinematography and shot choices and how they affect the story and emotions of a piece of animation. Welcome, Jacob. And Annalie, she's in her third semester with the community college, pursuing the animation CCL, hoping to add more 3D modeling and sculpting work. Excited for this class. And Nicholas, new to GCC, coming from Paradise Valley. Excited to be here and hope to learn something exciting for my career. The final semester. Yeah, a lot of students take this class towards the end of their degree, which is supposed to be what's happening. It's 240. So, I mean, roughly things are supposed to happen, you know, in numerical order. And then Audrey, she's a digital arts major and fourth year at GCC. I'm really excited for this class. And some other ones will probably roll in here in a second. Got this window docked over here. I wonder, can I do this? No, can't do that. I'll come back to that. Okay, speaking to this situation real quick. One of the things due this week. Syllabus acknowledgement. Please just take it as soon as possible. It's technically due by Wednesday. If you don't have the syllabus acknowledgement quiz done, which is literally one question, I have to drop you from the class. They're really being very strict about that because of there's this whole financial aid situation that cascades in a bad way if they stay in the class but have actually left. The school becomes financially liable. It's a whole thing. Anyways, it's easy to add people back later. Just please take the syllabus acknowledgement quiz so I can say that everybody has actually shown up for the class. There's no shows. And then the technology orientation thing is going to be due Thursday. So like I said, some things are out of the usual schedule this week, and then we'll settle into the usual schedule after this. But based, related to what we were just talking about, the one thing I'm going to ask you to do when you're making your very first video with OBS, a lot of you have already used OBS, right? How many of you are already streaming stuff occasionally online? Anybody? There are a couple of people in the morning class who had some channels where they do some stuff. Yeah, here's Lily. Final semester, and she's excited about planning shots and storyboards. And Michaela, who is finishing the time-based media and emotions through cinematography. Great. So this is OBS over here that you've seen me sort of click around on. This is I'm using it to stream to YouTube so that like all of this can happen. And you'll use it to record your videos. It's great at doing that. Yes. Yes.
I just want to mention because people are scared of random.exe files and OBS does not do well with the website design. It is also available. Also keeps it automatically out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So both Blender and OBS, I guess, can be downloaded through Steam, right? If you download Blender through Steam, right? Who did this? I think Punchy, you're the first student I saw do this. I assumed you're tracking your hours that you had spent on Blender because you downloaded it through Steam. Like how many hours you put into a game, which was just funny. Like, I mean, I've seen people talk about that. I mean, it was interesting to me as an old person where like I'd heard people use that metric in terms of like how many hours they put into a game, but I had never considered like using that for how many hours I put into some sort of, other program.
Done something for 1,500 hours. Please, master, for 15,000.
10,000 hours is the book that Outliers that Malcolm Gladwell wrote like 20 years ago. And that was this threshold he came up with, that 10,000 hours equals mastery. Mileage may vary in terms of that, right? It's an interesting, if you haven't read the book, it's worth checking out, but is that actually equal mastery? I'm sure we can find many examples of people who spent 10,000 hours doing something and you wouldn't consider them masters of whatever that was. So there's a lot of things there, but Outliers is that book. It's he's a great writer. Okay, so OBS, when you record we just did the very, very short introduction here. You're going to get to do a short but longer introduction of 3 minutes or less this week on OBS, where you introduce yourself to the rest of the class and answer the following questions, which is your name, how would you like to be addressed? And then now, new this semester, number 2, I want you to actually know exactly what program you're in at GCC, right? Are you doing the associates? Are you doing the certificate? Are you in video game or animation or time-based media? Does it seem confusing that we have something called animation and time-based media, and then we have something called digital media arts with a time-based media focus? Yes, that is confusing. Is the school working on trying to fix that? Yes, but it's a slow process. It's just sort of where we're at with all that. And then when you're doing this introductory video this semester, there are a lot of people in all of the classes. I think all of these classes are 20 plus people enrolled. So when we put the time limits on these videos, it's not because like I don't want to hear what everyone has to say. It's just that I want to hear what everyone has to say. And in order to get through everybody's stuff, it can't be super long. Okay? So am I going to be crazy draconian about this and throw out your video if it's 3 minutes and 5 seconds? No. Am I not going to play your entire video if it's 9 minutes? Yes. Right? So try to come in there. Later during the semester, when we do the weekly project videos, if one of those occasionally has to be longer because you've got a question or something like that, that's fine. We can make room for that. But we got to try and keep it to some sort of reasonable length in order to hear what everyone has to say. And then this year, instead of showing us 2 examples of artwork, I asked you to just show 1 and discuss it briefly. And yeah. Okay, so a lot of you already have experience with OBS, and you may or may not be using it for your other classes. Okay, the rest of the technology login assignment. This is the thing to point out. How many of you think you're going to check out a computer from the school? Okay. If you do, pay attention to this. It is different than last year in terms of not the form to get the computer, but rather installing stuff on the computer. Okay, so there's an additional level. Last year when you checked out the computer, you could just install whatever you wanted on it, no problem, right? This year they put an additional level of checks in there, and so it'll try to get permission to install. We shouldn't have problems with the permissions. You just need someone to actually grant the permission. And so that's what this tutorial right here is describing. So please, if you're checking one out from the school, watch this so that you're on board. The big thing is that you got to ask for permission during usual business hours. because there's actually someone over there in IT saying like, okay, okay, okay. They thought that was best. So that's what we're doing right now. Hopefully it's fine. It should be fine. Great. Okay, so we need to have OBS. We need to have Discord. We talked about the Discord thing. Also, with Discord, don't buy Nitro. Okay, you don't need to have Nitro for this class because we will not upload videos to Discord. Okay, when we put a video on Discord, it's almost always one that you've put on your Maricopa YouTube channel, and you'll put the link on Discord, not the actual video itself. Does that make sense for everybody? Because the size for Discord attachments is by default small, and then if you try to upload something bigger, they'll try to sell you Nitro. If you have Nitro for other purposes, fine, great. But you do not need to buy Nitro for this class. Is that clear for everybody? People, the first week, there's always someone on Discord saying, oh my God, I need to buy Nitro in order to do anything. No, you don't. Okay? You don't need it for this class. Good. And then over here, Blender. So good news is it's really easy to install Blender. I'm on 5.2 here at school, and I have the other versions, the last couple of versions on here. And so when you're here, it should take you, and this should be installing, 5.2 right here on Blender. And then our Adobe license that covers us at school and at home. So most of you already have that worked out in order to use those programs at home. So when you're done with this, you'll be uploading a link to your introduction video, as well as screenshots for all of the stuff that you were working on and got installed into your computer. Okay, sound good? Any questions there with any of that? Trenton says the link from YouTube is pretty easy. Yeah, it shouldn't be no problem. Okay, that's good. This is good. All right, let's bring this over here. Bring this in. Okay, let's talk about Blender a little bit here, sort of get everybody rolling. Everybody got their notebooks out? Awesome, great. Okay, a lot of our projects this semester, I would say the first maybe, let's say we're in 3/3 of, if we divided the whole semester into thirds. Number one is working on understanding the camera / virtual camera. So the good news here, how many of you have taken actual photography class? What is the number on that one? It's like PHO? No. What's the photography letters? I forget off the top of my head. Anyways, there's two, we have many photography classes, but the good news is that the virtual camera, meaning the camera that is in Blender or is in Unity or is in Unreal Engine, for the most part is designed to mimic a real world camera. And so your knowledge of a real world camera and your experience shooting real world video or real world stills will transfer here. We try to make it as much like that as possible because a lot of people already come in with that metaphor. But we won't have the same restrictions as in real life for all sorts of smaller things. For instance, just something like shadows. In a digital environment, those can be on or off per object. Whereas in regular photography class, that's not something you can do, right? You can't go into the studio and just say that your subject is not going to cast shadows on the background. That's not a box you can check on a digital camera, right? And so this is both a plus and a minus in that sometimes the virtual environment doesn't work like the real world, and that it makes it tough to understand. But it's ultimately more flexible, and so that if you know what you're doing, gives you a little bit more room. And so as we do that, we usually work through a different aspect of the camera each week for maybe like more like 5 weeks. Then we're moving on to more scenes, more of the directing part of the class. And so in here, we're looking more at the parts of storyboarding, looking at, we do a project where we take a script and translate it into storyboards and translate it into actual scenes, and thinking about how to do things according to the 180-degree rule for dealing with dialogue, or how the different types of shot language in terms of what, if you're communicating with someone else, how do you describe the kind of shots that you're looking for, right? In different environments, this would be the kind of conversations that a director would have with someone called the DOP. What is the DOP? Does anyone know? The director of photography. So on any sort of medium to large budget movie, the DOP works underneath the director to manifest their vision using the tools of light and photography, right? So I'll point this out throughout the course of the semester. A lot of what we do is sort of switching from role to role, putting on different hats, right? You can think about what those hats would be. Maybe your director hat is a beret, right? So that, you know, it's very artsy. Whereas the director of photography hat is more of a baseball cap. It's more of a straight ahead work person's like approach to how does this actually happen at the end of the day. So you get to wear all of the hats by taking them on and off and looking at different parts of the process there. And then in the third part here, we sort of apply all those, apply everything. And in the past, we've usually done like a music video project where people picked out a piece of music, a portion of a piece of music that they were drawn to, and created a music video for that using all of these principles that we've worked on throughout the semester. So this is one of the projects where we use our Digital Millennium Act educational fair use for this. So in other projects, you've heard me specifically tell you to not use copyrighted music. More for the, first of all, I have no legal concerns about you doing that at all. I am not a lawyer. I am not here to enforce the law. That is not my job. That's not why I'm telling you not to do it. I'm just telling you not to do it before so that we didn't get our stuff yanked down off of YouTube all the time, right? Because their copyright infringement is kind of automatic and, in my opinion, problematic. See what I did there? Rhymed all that. Anyway, for the music video, we've stepped aside from that and, you know, picked something that, you know, a copyrighted piece of music that we're just using a portion of there. So something to start thinking about. I'll show you as we go throughout the semester some of the ones from last fall were really good. Like you may have seen them in our end of year GCC Film Festival. We played a bunch of them, and some of them ended up in Artists of Promise. We had some really, really fun music videos last year. So this class is only offered in the fall here, given our current schedule. And so there wasn't a spring version of 240. In the 240 slot, I usually teach 287 in the spring. We apply all that together over the course of the semester. So that's kind of the overall trajectory of what we're doing over the course of the semester. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah. And, you know, especially with the final project, you know, I'll have my ideas and requirements for that. But if at any point, you know, you want to do some other project that you think also satisfies those requirements, if you write it up, I would be more than willing to give you a yay or nay on that. So feel free. Just be aware that if you, the further away from the system that you drift, it becomes that much harder to sort of like help everybody out to the same degree. Yes. Yeah, if you wanted to use a different tool, like I don't, with all the other moving parts, like I don't, you know, with all the other new stuff, I probably wasn't going to do it in class, but yeah, I mean, you already have some experience and everything with it, so like, that's probably fine. So, yeah, like just yet another piece of software on top of the whole system here. I probably wasn't going to do it this semester. We'll see how everything goes. If everything works great out of the box, and then we'll have extra time, but we'll see. How many of you have been to a movie theater in the past year, since January 1st?
We wait to watch the Odyssey.
Okay, yeah, I've been waiting to try and get tickets to go see the 70mm version at Arizona Mills, and it's been sold out since it came out. So I haven't seen it yet.
We just went to IMAX, but it was a great.
Yeah. Looks really great. Okay, that's good. I'm glad the hands went up because usually, sometimes it's not been quite so much. How many of you saw Backrooms?
Oh my god. Oh no, I still need to watch it. So spoilers. Have you seen the original with Backrooms?
Yeah, I've watched a couple of interviews with Cameron. What's his name? Cade. Cade. That's it. Yeah. Kane. Yeah.
But did you see the videos that he made?
Yeah, I looked around on his YouTube channel. Yeah, like so. Yeah, like that. We can look at some of that stuff too. Like he's using Blender there for some of the early ones. Yeah, and probably to some extent still.
Most of the movie is in Blender.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't sat down to watch the whole movie yet, but it's not. It might be too scary for me. I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't have the same capacity for that as I used to.
Wait, is the movie based on this?
It's
Based on the series, yes. It's this is like different things.
Yeah, it's not
Alex wants to do his work, but his is the OG, the base, the marketing.
well, I mean, originally comes from a 4chan phone, but like short horror, it's like 2 horror.
Yeah, that I'm aware of, but I mean like he created.
You really kind of weird.
Yeah. You might have well asked.
How many of you saw Obsession?
No, not yet.
And how many of you saw The Odyssey?
Oh, I know.
My brother is a filmmaker, so he went dragged all of us to Arizona.
Mhm.
So
Oh, you got to see it at Arizona Mills, in that? Oh, cool.
I am so upset. I really want to see Iron Man, but it didn't come out in the theaters in Arizona.
It did.
It did?
Yeah, I went with my friends.
When I looked for tickets, I couldn't find any. I don't know.
They probably, I mean, for my friends, it was kind of hard to get tickets, but we were able to get it.
But did he?
Yes.
I just want to watch it.
You could go
And Annalie online says that she has tickets to see the 70mm Odyssey in September. And Jacob saw Obsession and Backrooms.
We also went to watch The End of Oak Street the other day at the drive-in.
Oh, that's the one with the dinosaurs or whatever, right?
And I'm so sorry, but that one thing that we kind of hilarious. I don't want to spoil it, but it's like it's one of those dates that we've been repeated. If the character just pulled their head,
Yeah, because they're smart. They don't do that for me.
it's like, I mean, how many times was the character killed in the movie because they knock out the villain or the monster, but they don't finish it off first before worrying about anything else?
Even like the person who's like the Deacon's obsessed with horror movies is like,
Oh, I didn't think of that one.
it's the most blatant trope.
Like the only character I've ever seen in that trope was on Ender's Game, where he knocks the bully down and still continues kicking with the bully. And then it's basically the entirety of the story. It's like the reason they chose Ender was because he didn't just stop the fun fight, he stopped future fights.
Right.
Cool. All right. Let's look at some Blender. But do this thinking about the camera a little bit more than usual. Okay, so the cinematography part here. Thinking about this object and its relationship to the real world camera, the virtual camera. First of all, navigation in Blender, our middle mouse button, plus middle mouse button and shift. And then we can zoom in and out with our scroll wheel here. If you're just looking at the totally vanilla Blender, default, you'll have the cube, and then you'll also have the, A light and A camera in there. And by default, you should be able to see the camera. And so one piece of vocabulary here I would write down. Just want to make sure I have the spelling right. This when we see a virtual camera, we usually see this. This is referred to as the frustrum, right? This view, what looks like a pyramid is facing in the direction that the camera is facing. This is the camera frustrum. And in most programs, you'll have it. And as we adjust the field of view, we'll see it actually changing in the program. And so, for instance, if I change the focal length here, we see that actually adjusting over there in the program. And something to keep in mind here is that we can see the camera here, which means that something you need to keep in mind at all times when you're working now, thinking as a cinematographer, is am I looking through the camera? Right. In those of you who have worked with Unity before, like AVC 200 last spring, you were dealing with this all the time, and Unity sort of spells this out in a more direct way, where you have one view that is where you're working, and you have another view that's always looking through the game camera, right? Blender, by default, does not have that same kind of thing, but we can create that by sort of manipulating the interface a little bit. So in Blender, if you mouse over, Blender has all these hidden interface things where there's like no button or any indicator that there's a thing there, but if you know, you know. So up here at the corner of any sort of interface element, you can mouse over the corner and get a little crosshairs. And if you do that, you can open up a second window, right? And so I have this, and I have this now. And so something you could do that may be useful here at the beginning is in this one, have this be more like in Unity what we would call the scene view, where this is where we can work and do stuff. For instance, in this case, duplicate a lot of cubes. That's stuff one could do, right? And over here, I'm going to press N to open up the side drawer over here. Everybody's familiar with that. And come down to View and go Camera to View. And make sure that we're looking through our camera. So come over here, press 0. So that's one of the first things is in the numpad. So I'd start a new page in my notes in Blender that has shortcuts. Numpad 0 is look through camera. That's really important one for this class. It's also important to note that by default in Blender, the numpad numbers don't do the same thing that the numbers across the top of the keyboard do. So this would be at home. Most of you probably have keyboards that have the extra numpad over there. If you're working on a laptop, you may or may not have it. For working with Blender, I find it's much easier to have the numpad. Makes it easier. But now I'm in a situation where I can work over here and do things, and while also seeing what is the actual output of this going to look like. It's going to look like this. This is the frame of what would actually get rendered out of Blender. Let's go ahead and save this as an example. Make our new folder for this class. There you go. Cool. Good. Now, a little bit of a danger alert here. I've done something and I've started messing with the Blender interface. Oh no, things have gone wrong. right? I've lost a bunch of windows. I don't know where anything is. How do I get back? The plus here, come back to general and layout and make a new one. Okay, and this will be stuck with the defaults of where it was. If you need to get back to the other one, it's over here, or you can just delete this one if it's really unsavable at that point. So that's usually the shortest way. Rather than trying to move all the windows back or panes back to where it was, I think it's easier to just do that. So these windows can be, moved however you want. You can put them next to each other or not. And then the other one, which is nice, is Control Spacebar. So Control Spacebar is similar to tilde in After Effects, for those of you who know that shortcut. And so whichever window pane the mouse is currently over, it takes that one and makes it full screen. And so especially when you're working, I like doing this just to get the rest of the interface out of the way and just be like, oh, okay, this is much cleaner. And this is super useful for down here when we start to do a bunch of keyframing work and you just need some more space and you don't have two screens like some people have set up. It makes it much easier. So Control Spacebar is the one that does that. Now we have some things in Blender and we're looking at them. We've got the camera set up here. Let's come back and look and see. Now that we can see over here, we've got our camera and some sort of subject. Over here, we can see what the camera is actually looking at. If we select the camera in the outliner over here, let me make sure that OBS is up so I can see what people are saying. Select this and let's look at some of the camera parameters. So first one here, focal length. We're going to get to this. I'll discuss this at more length on Wednesday. But as I'm adjusting this number here, what would you say is happening? Yeah, we're zooming in and out. The important thing to understand here, and we'll set up an example where we can see this clearly, is that we're not just changing the framing, right? It does get smaller and it does get bigger, but this is working as if it were a real world lens. And so it's changing two things. The focal length changes the number one, framing, and number two, the visual portrayal of space. We'll look at some examples of this. This is really important. So the relationship of objects to other objects in the scene changes when you adjust the focal length there. So contrary to what some students think, the focal length, this doesn't directly control are things, quote unquote, in focus? That's a more complicated question for not today. But the focal length has to do with what's happening in terms of the distance of conversion in front of our light gathering unit. And it is in, over here, millimeters. This is another instance where the virtual camera is trying to mimic the real world camera usage, right? And so we're allowed here to drag things to an extreme. 5 millimeter. There's not a real world camera that has a 5 millimeter focal length, right? You can get to some really weird, strange values here, which you would not be available. And so that's, again, a plus and minus. You can do impossible things. However, most often the impossible things don't look good because it's not really part of the language of cinema, right? It's not something that a real world cinematographer or director of photography would do, right? So just to be clear on that, let's say title, what we talked about before. I don't know why. Where is my thing? There we go. These two words are synonymous: cinematographer equals DOP, right? Director of photography. Let's look at this. Start and end. I'm going to dial this back. And here, another example of the virtual camera. So how far can you see with a real world camera? It's definitely not infinite, right? It sort of depends on the environment quite a bit, right? Because what is a real world camera gathering? Photons, right? Little bits of light that hit our lens. Here, we're not quite so limited. For instance, in a lot of instances in real world situations where you would end up with infinite values, here in the computer, they can't be infinite because we need to limit them. And so our clip start and clip end here is something people run into pretty often in Blender starting off. And so our clip end, see what's happening? What's going on here, Max?
So, like not rendering, not showing, I guess, whatever is past the clip end.
Yeah, only on the right though, right? So this is relative to what? The camera position, right? Because over here, these things are not going away in this view, right? Because we're just looking at the whole scene. Over here, we're actually looking through the camera because we have this frame. And so this value, this end, this is actually stuff that's this distance from the camera won't get rendered. So you see this in video games if you're paying attention, right? Especially if you're in a big outdoor scene. You don't want your video game eating up a whole bunch of energy trying to render trees that are really, really far in the distance. Things will get eliminated past this clip end here.
That's why the original Wasteland was so full.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a technical limitation that has been put into design, especially in older games when you really couldn't show a ton of stuff. You know when you wouldn't need to show a lot of stuff? If you're in a small cramped room, or if you're outside and there's a lot of fog, and we wouldn't need to be able to see everything. And so that really helps. Trenton says of a trick they used in the original Halo where they would use the camera to mimic movement on still objects. Oh, by moving the camera, I guess? Yeah. And so the other one here, clip start, is useful for situations like this. So if I grab this here, so what's the shortcut here for moving this cube around in Blender? G, right? What's G an abbreviation for? Grab, right? The move tool. And so here, if I grab and move this close to the camera like this, this is something that can happen in computer Blender scenes. Did the computer go out?
Yeah. So, where I can plug it in.
Oh, your computer. Yeah,
Like this, it's there. I should
it's just the ones around the wall. We've got to get some more ones up here. So like yeah, like the.
Am I allowed to lift this?
Is there a thing there?
There's stuff.
There's
there.
a box.
There's a
down
box.
there.
I can open it, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to.
It's like right here.
Yeah, sure. If there's one in.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we got to make that more easily accessible. Okay, over here, check this out, right? So here we've got a situation where you're not going to run into this in the real world very often. See how the camera is like jammed up against this cube here? Like no one would be carrying a real world camera and then put it up against the screen, right? That you just don't do that, right? It would be weird. Yeah, it just wouldn't happen, right? But in the computer, this kind of thing, because the virtual camera isn't an actual thing, right? The virtual camera is just a single point in space from which things are getting rendered. And so this kind of thing happens. And so over here with the virtual camera, if you change the clip start, right? Now things very close to the camera won't get rendered, right? And so this happens in video games all the time. So that stuff, you know, if you're running around the video game and you end up against some enemy, it's usually not great for gameplay to have the enemy obfuscate everything on the screen, right? Where something like this allows that to not happen, right? So now by turning the clip start, there's no plugs in there, or they're all taken up.
They were all very weirdly laid out. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just use one of the ones around the wall for now. Like we got to come up with some better plugs in here, but you know, it'll happen.
Sometimes being fancy is not the best idea.
Okay, so our camera clipping here. There's two things to keep in mind though. We have our clipping over here, which is applied to our render. And then if we look at the camera itself, there's the view clipping. So this comes up when I press N and I get the side view, and then I go to the view tab over here, right? Everyone's kind of aware of this side tab in Blender here, yes? Pressing N. And so this essentially shows you the options, and usually a lot of the add-on functionality ends up in this menu. But going to view here with the camera selected, this is the clip start and clip end for the entire window. And so in Blender, it's possible to do the Ant-Man stuff, where I end up either really, really zoomed out and I'm giant and I can't see anything, or I get really, really zoomed in and and I can't see anything because I get too close to whatever it is. The view over here can be one of those things. So for instance, if I make something really big, so I grab this and I press S and I start scaling it up really, really big. And then I were to start adjusting the view clipping here. So I'll adjust it down. You'll see that this works kind of like the camera, but this is for the actual view. Remember, over here, I am not looking through the camera. I'm just moving what's actually available to be seen in the actual scene. So let's get rid of this one for now. And then over here. And then, let's see. Israel. If I go to render this scene, which of these windows is actually going to render? The left one or the right one?
Right?
The right one, because this is the one where we're actually looking through the camera here. And so over here, we go ahead and render. We get this. And we get another difference between real world cameras and real life. So what's different in these two shots? Mark, what do you think? Ed, what do you think? What's the difference between this and this?
Gives you a fuller picture on on the points that
Okay, and right now, what does the viewport not have that the render does have? Shadowing, right. So we get to, in Blender, we get to, keep hitting that over here. When you're making an image digitally, you get to opt in to all sorts of optical features. For instance, shadows, different colors of light. We can say yes or no. Reflections. All of these things are things that you can sort of say yes or no. I want those things. Whereas in real life, you don't get to make that distinction, right? Those are just facts of the matter for doing photography. Yes.
Is there a way to access occluded shadows without using materials?
To access what now?
Occluded shadows.
I don't know off the top of my head. I haven't had to do that. When would you want to do that?
Like, these two things are interesting. So, the shadows here and they're supposed to.
Oh yeah. In the render passes, in the scene view. So you can get a separate ambient occlusion pass there. We'll get to that later. But yeah, so this is separate from the shadow pass there. So this, by default, doesn't look like what we actually render. And a lot of times that is not a great way to work, right? This is part of the real, the situation of working with computer graphics is that over here, those of you who've taken my classes before, what does that stand for? Yes. What you see is what you get. You know what's when you pronounce the acronym, it's WYSIWYG, right? What you see is what you get. Real world is WYSIWYG. By default, Blender is not WYSIWYG. Why is that the case? That seems dumb, right? Why not just make the render look exactly like what's in the window right now? Why is this the case? Because it is expensive. Not from a monetary standpoint, but from a computational standpoint, right? In terms of how much the work the computer has to do. And so by default, the computer tries to be lazy, or Blender's programmers do, in that they try to make sure it can run anywhere. And so one of the things that they've done here to keep it light to start is that the Blender viewport is set to this one, or by default, actually this one, which is called, why is it not highlighting the right one?
I just call it plain.
Yeah, it's solid. Yeah, but it's not doing the overlay thing. Oh, it only does it on the other one. There you go. Solid, right? So this one here, let me make sure that one's highlighted. There we go. There we go. So this one's not going to do shadows or anything like that. Why? Because this is trying to be fast. This one over on the right is the one where this is going to essentially turn Blender into WYSIWYG, where what we see in the window is what we're going to actually get. And so this one over here, if you look at it, this is the rendered viewport shading. And so now, if I look at this and I press render, who knows what the shortcut is for rendering in Blender? F12. Now, on the keyboards here, especially at school, the F12 key will not, it'll do this by default, which is just the Windows part. You need to hold down the function key and then press F12, and that will render the window. There we are. Now we see that the viewport over here mimics this. And so we're seeing the exact same thing in both places. Do that again. There you go. Here and over there. So this is a reasonable view to have here, where we're using this to do the work of a director. Where are my actors? Where are they going on stage? What are they doing? And then over on this window over here, this is more of what the DOP's job is. How does this actually look through the camera, right? Over here, we're doing set dressing, we're doing production design, we're doing all sorts of other jobs in terms of like, how do I get the things that we see on camera to look like how I want? And then over here on the right hand side, like how does it actually end up looking on camera here? Let's just set this up in a pretty, intuitive way. Now over here on the left hand side, I could take the role of a gaffer. What does a gaffer do on set? Anybody know? Lights. That person's working a lot with the lights, placing the lights. Yeah, for a lot of like real world productions, especially for small student things, the gaffer is primarily in charge of plugging in the lights and making sure you don't blow a fuse in the house that you're filming in, because that happens. We have a lot of new LED lights here at school. How many of you taken VPT 108, the actual video production class? Has anybody taken that? Okay. If you have room in your schedule, that would be also a worthwhile endeavor. To be on a real world set at least once in your life is very informative for doing this kind of work, for sure. So now I'm going to be the gaffer and move this light around. And now moving the light around makes a difference. I can see what's happening here because it changes the lighting. If this right-hand window was in solid view and I grabbed the light and moved it around, I don't even see what's going on. And so that. Why does Blender just not look like this all the time? Because occasionally, once we start doing more and more complicated things, this may be really slow. And so you'll only get to see the render when you check in by rendering a frame. But for now, especially for the first couple of weeks, and as long as you're not getting really crazy with the amount of stuff in the scene, this works. So having this kind of view now allows you to set something up like this a lot more, I think, in an intuitive way. So does this make sense here? Why we would set the program up like this based on what we're talking about, right? So let's go ahead and set up a kind of stage situation here. What time is it? 2:44. Okay, good. We have enough time. Let's do it. Let me go ahead and save this. And we are going to nuke a bunch of cubes and then go from there. So let's set up sort of reasonable-ish stage. Here we go. I'm going to make a plane. So making new stuff. Couple more Blender shortcuts. How do I get the menu for new things? I'm gonna add something. Shift A, right? So we're gonna make a new plane. We are going to add the bevel modifier in order to curve the back of it. And this is going to make a backdrop that we're going to use. Then we're going to center the camera so that we can see what we're doing and it's lined up in a way that makes sense to the rest of the view. And then we're going to put lights on both sides. And so a light on the left and a light on the right for now. We'll do 2 lights here and then we'll go from that. Cool. All right, let's do it. I'm going to delete the ones we have actually, here and here, and then come over here and Shift A and make a new plane. There we go. Let's go ahead and zero this out. And come in. Okay, so we've got the plane here and we're going to set our camera up on the y-axis and look at the scene. But in order to stretch this out, I'm going to go ahead and tab into Edit View, which allows me to change some of the geometry. So those of you who have done modeling class or are sticking around for the next class will be in this view way more. But here, now I can access the points, edges, and faces of what's going on. I'm just going to grab an edge, press E, and pull that out, like so. These can be moved with the G key, just like before. So you see that gives us some kind of backdrop. Tab back out. And let's add a modifier. So over here, I'm going to select the plane and go to here and add the bevel. You see what that does right here? It bevels that corner that we made when we extruded out that one edge. And so now, this is how much of the bevel size there is. And then the second one is the segments. So you can see that that rounds it out. Finch, why don't we like this bevel? It's not smooth, so we need to do what?
Shade smooth.
Yep, we need to turn on shade smoothing. So the default, which you may find kind of annoying in Blender, is that it's not smooth. We see the individual faces. It's not trying to smooth this out, and that's a per object thing. So you have to be in object mode, right? So tabs between object mode and edit mode by default if you're in the layout view. You want to be in object mode. The only thing that we did in edit mode was extrude this extra edge. That was it. And so in object mode, if you right click, you can say shade smooth. So let's watch what happens. Right here in the backdrop. Right click, shade smooth. Now we get this smooth backdrop. The word for this there we go. I would add it to your vocabulary in your notes. Cyclorama or cyc, right, is going to be our sort of backdrop here in this kind of studio situation. Right, here's one where it's more cube-like, but we're just sort of doing with this part here. Right, so this is kind of like what we're reproducing. It's kind of studio here. the nice part about doing it this way is if I want to change this angle, I can tab back into edit mode. I can grab this edge and move it around. And you see how the nice curve is maintained as I move this around. I can go GY to constrain it so that it doesn't get off axis. I'm going to go ahead and save. And I'm going to come over here to the name and change it. Cool. Okay, let's bring the camera back so our right-hand side matters again. Over here. I'm going to tab back into object mode. I'm going to add a camera. Deanna, how am I going to add a camera? What do I need to press? Shift A. And very good. And we try to read the screen, even though it's very small. And there's camera. There we go. Now I'm going to come over here and zero out the camera under the object. So let's say 0 location. So that puts it back in the middle, and I'll go ahead and zero out the rotation as well. So I've got 0, 0, and now my camera is right here. Let's go ahead and move our camera into position. So now, moving something like this, rather than just grabbing the G key and moving it around, this isn't very precise. I want to actually move it a little bit more precisely. So I'm going to come up here and turn on the gizmo, which allows me to move, rotate, and scale. Just makes it a little bit easier to move things. And so now I can move it up. I can move it straight back, and then I can rotate it on a single axis. I can hold down Control while I'm doing that so that that's there. And actually, let's turn those on over here. So I'm going to turn these on here. I'm going to come over here, press N, and go camera to view, and press 0 over here. There we go. And now over here, when I select this, I can move this around to make sure that this is pointed at the backdrop. And if I move it too far back, you see that we can't even see the backdrop. If I rotate it, if I hold down Control, I can straighten things out. So either by using Control or coming over here and adjusting some of these if you want by hand, either way. And I'll move it a little bit closer. There we go. So that's straight on with these values, 90, negative 80, 100. Those would only be the same if you have it lined up the same way, right? So this camera is pointing along the green one. The green one is which one? Y, right? So keep that in mind. Let's move this up, and I'm going to move it down just a little bit. Cool. It's a little bit hard to see what's happening over here because this is in, assuming you left it like I did, this is in our render view, right? And why is it so dark? There's no lights, right? So let's make some lights. Celeste, how do we add a light? What do I have to press? Shift A. And then there's a lot of different lights. For right now, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to use a point light, which is like a light bulb. Okay, goes out in all directions from a point. And so I'll make a new point light. And now the right-hand side gets a little bit easier to see because we can tell what's going on. Main things for our light, if we come out over here under our light, big one is our power, right? How bright is this? And we also don't really see anything here. I'm going to put a temporary subject in there. And let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to press S to scale this down and just sort of move it over and move it into position. That makes it a little bit easier to see what's happening. Cool. So we have our light to the side of the camera. If I look at this from the top, you can clearly see what's going on. We have our light here, or camera, and then light over here. Let's move the light this way a little bit, actually, back like that. We have a light falling onto the backdrop. We could adjust this, you know, depending on how we would want from this view here. Let's see. So a lot of studio things that we can do here in Blender. You get to really experiment with all of this, whereas like moving the wall in your studio is a much bigger ordeal for real people than for us doing it in the virtual environment here. Montana, what do I need to do to this sphere to smooth it out? There we go. That looks more spherical. Finch, how do I give this in color? Well, I have to add a what? Material. Material, right? This is part of the separation here, is that this is a mesh. And every mesh, in order to have some sort of color, needs a material in there. And so I'm going to select the sphere, come down here to material, and just hit new. That will give me enough options, provided Blender doesn't crash here. Oh, cross your fingers. There we go. All right. Now I'm going to save. There we go. And there we go. And on the cyclorama. We're not going to worry about all the other material stuff. Just wanted to have it not be gray. And so this also helps us differentiate between the working view and the render view over here, so we can really see what's happening. Because again, over here, no shadows. This is super fast, whereas depending as things get more complicated, this would be slower to update over there. But now we can always be looking through our camera, and then here we go. So if we look at something like this, right? So you've seen a lot of behind the scenes stuff where we see the cameras, and then, yeah, now we're able to get a tap into the digital camera that we're using to shoot the whole thing on a separate screen that allows the director of photography and possibly the director to actually see what's going on in the shot, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here with this monitor over on this side, is that as we do things, for instance, the director comes in and says, I don't like this. I want there to be 2 spheres. What do I have to press to create another sphere? Shift D. Now there's 2 spheres. The director comes back and is even more demanding. They're like, no, 3 spheres. No, 6 spheres. Could make an array. I could grab all of them and Shift D all 3 at the same time. And now I have 6 spheres to satisfy my overly demanding director that's there. No! That's the main thing you need to learn, is like the director's going to yell at you a lot, no matter what you're doing. No, there's lots of perfectly nice directors, although that wasn't always the case in the past. Cool. So we're able to get things going here. Let's save this. Let's look at the shadows once. So I'm going to select the point light over here and just look at a couple parameters for the light. If I come in and grab this right here. The power is the big one here. We're able to change the amount of light that's coming into the scene. The next most important one is this radius. What does this mean? This is going to be sort of like the radius of the light source. And so this is going to be a good way to control our shadow sharpness. Watch the shadows here as I dial up the radius. See how they soften up? And so as this light source gets bigger, the shadows get softer. We'll spend a whole week talking about light, but this is a good rule of thumb to put down right now. Big light source equals soft, not soft, soft shadows. Small light source, sharp shadows. This is why, which one, if we're talking about people, right? We're going to photograph people that we want to look pleasant, okay? Which of these types of shadows are we probably after? Soft, right? We're not trying to make them look like monsters. I mean, sometimes that's the job, but not in this case. Which is why we see things like this on set, especially, let's say, there we go. So if we look at this over here, photographing this woman, trying to make her look, fine. So we have these large light sources with these diffusers in front of them to soften up the light and have soft shadows so this woman doesn't have a bunch of very acute angular shadows going across her face, which is not conventionally what people are doing when they're making things look quote unquote good or photographic in that sense, right? So we'll reference this kind of thing as we're moving there. important to realize because the default here is 0, which gives you these really sharp shadows. Look at that. This is also one of those issues where the default is not good. So you need to be aware of this in two ways. One, throughout the course of the semester, we'll try and create our own new defaults so that when we just create stuff kind of on the fly, the default is that it's something that looks good rather than something that we need to adjust and looks not great out of the box. Over here, the other thing is to, reset the defaults. So we have something that looks nice. This computer graphics by default here, you'll hear me say this over again, too perfect. We're in this perfect simulated environment. Part of what makes real life visually interesting is there's this variation in it, right? There's variations in the surface. There's variations in the intensity of light. Dust is randomly eating up various amounts of light in this room. All of these things are incredibly expensive in terms of computer cycles to mimic by default. They're not the fast way to do it. And so something like this, right? Would you say this kind of sharp shadow, does that look like a new video game or an old video game?
Well, I would say it's more so kind of related to video games with some shading technology.
Right, because that was faster, right? Whichever one, PS1, PS2 would not be capable of the same fidelity of shadows that PS4, PS5 is, right? Which is, in general, everyone knows like new video games look quote unquote more realistic than older ones, right? Because those things are computationally available now, and they weren't before. So this is kind of a stylistic and technical intersection. Old things, there's lots of people who want to make retro style stuff. That's fine. That's a perfectly legitimate aesthetic decision to make. Is that when you're making retro style stuff, most of the time it looks that way with technology is because it wasn't possible to make photorealistic games on the NES, right? It just wasn't, capable of doing that. You need to be aware of that paradigm. So, for instance, here, we want to make this look like a slightly better shadow. This one is also super important. I would write this one down. Over here, shift while dragging equals smaller change. So, for a lot of parameters here, you'll click and drag it to see like, does this do anything? Does this do anything? Does this do anything? Sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it does way too much. And it's hard with the mouse to get it where you want it. If you hold down shift while you're dragging, it makes it so it changes it way less per mouse movement. And I'm able to more delicately drag and dial in the softness of these shadows than just clicking and dragging by itself. So that one's super useful. Shift drag. That works in the parameter, and it also works over here. Here I am dragging, and here I am shift dragging. You guys see the difference there? Right? So if I just move my hand back and forth, it's that much. If I shift drag, it's that much. Okay, it just allows you to make finer adjustments with the mouse. Let's save. And one more. Let's set up another light here. So I'll take this light and Mark, how do I make another light?
Control-C, Control-V.
Could do that. That's too much work. I don't want to press that many buttons.
Near the top of the screen, there's add, and then
Ah, that's too long. Even shorter shortcuts. I want the shortest shortcut possible.
I know that shortcut.
Shift-D.
Control-C.
Shift-D is duplicate. Shift-D. Write it down.
Blender shifty.
Blender is Shift-D.
There's apparently an add-on where you can use your controller as an extra input device. device. So like a cheap version of the streamer buttons.
You mean your like game controller? Or...
Yeah.
Oh, in Blender?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you could map, for example, undo on the X button, for example. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. If someone can figure out how it works, pretty cool tool.
Yeah, having extra buttons is great. Okay, so I've got a second light now over here. I would probably label these over here. Let's say this one is right light. We'll come to these names later. This one over here will be left light. And we've got, there we go. That one, which one was this? That's, there we go. Thank you. Right light. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take off caps lock because I'm not yelling all the time, just sometimes. Light underscore right. And then over here, this one will be light underscore left. And so that, rather than putting right or left at the beginning, if you do something like this, by default, it puts them next to each other in the outliner over here, right? Because by default, this is alphabetical. Yes, we could make collections for these things, and we'll do that eventually, but this makes it just sort of easier to keep things organized over here. And then this light over here, I don't want it to be exactly the same as the other one. So some students think that they want everything to be perfectly symmetrical on both sides. And again, that's not a great artistic decision in most instances. And so I'm going to make the power on this one a little bit less. So there's a light over there, but it's not as bright as the other light. And then it's at a slightly different angle so that I'm getting more nuanced shadows over here, right? Look at what's happening with the shadows as I move this light around over there. Everybody see what's happening there? The second shadow is moving as we actually place everything in place. Okay, let's save that because I want to be able to stream the rest of the building here for a little bit at the end of sketch class. But we've got a super simple studio setup. Something that you can do. We talked about changing the defaults. Here's one way to do it, is that you come over here to defaults and save startup file. So for instance, you can change this later, but if we say save startup file, now next time we get a new Blender file, what's the shortcut to make a new Blender file, Deanna? New Blender file. New. Control N. N. And so if I say new file, boom. You're like, wait, did you open a new file? Yes, I did. It's the same as my other file, right? So here is this. Let me change it. And now if I press Control N, instead of nothing with a default cube, I get this as my default starting point, right? So when I make a new file here, I don't need to build a new studio each time. It's just there, ready to go. Make sense? Smarter way to work rather than just spending the rest of your life deleting default cubes. You guys deserve more than that. What has the default cube ever done to you?
It's a short form of Apple. It's pretty sad.
It sounds like it would be very short. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this stream. and then open up a new stream here on my phone so that we can take a quick tour of the building. Everybody ready? And come over here and flip this. And stop this.